They thought you were done. They looked at you and saw weakness because that's what they wanted to see. They mistook your silence for surrender, your wounds for defeat. They whispered in corners, laughed behind closed doors, convinced themselves that you were just another soul they could erase without consequence. But what they didn't understand, what they never saw, was that you were never broken. You were rebuilding. Quietly. Patiently. Like a storm biding its time. They don't laugh anymore. Because now, you've become everything they feared. Not because you shouted louder. Not because you begged for recognition. But because you embraced the pain they tried to bury you in and you turned it into something they could never control. They thought they held power. That their ridicule, their rejection, their sabotage would crush you. But they underestimated the most dangerous force on earth, the one who has nothing left to lose, and everything left to prove. You never needed to take their power. You just had to stop giving them yours. And when you did, everything changed. They built their thrones on your silence, but now, that silence is your war cry. You became the reckoning they didn't expect. Because pain doesn't break you, it shapes you. Trauma doesn't make you weaker, it sculpts you into someone who cannot be broken the same way twice. Every scar they gave you became armor. Every betrayal became data. Every humiliation became fuel. And now, they're choking on their own illusion. Let them sit in the empire of ash they created. Let them breathe in the smoke of their own arrogance. Let them stew in the silence that used to comfort them, because now, it only reminds them of you. And how you didn't just survive them, you transcended them. Because here's the brutal truth. You were never playing their game. You were building a world where they don't exist. They tried to measure your worth through their validation, tried to cage you inside the limits of their imagination. But they never understood that you don't live in their world. You were forged outside of it. In darkness. In isolation. In places they've never dared to go, and never will. You were always meant to be the outlier. The anomaly. The one who slipped through the cracks and returned with fire in their veins and silence in their soul. They couldn't break you because you were never theirs to hold. They couldn't destroy you because you were already in pieces and you learned how to rebuild yourself better than they ever could. That's what they'll never admit. That's what they'll never understand. They thought your downfall was a matter of time. But they misunderstood the clock. While they were wasting seconds trying to bury you, you were building hours of mastery. While they were counting moments of your pain, you were calculating lifetimes of strength. And now, you are not just ahead, you're unreachable. Not because you sprinted. Because you ascended. There's a kind of power in pain that terrifies the comfortable. There's a kind of strength in solitude that destroys the arrogant. And there's a kind of rage in silence that shakes the foundations of every lie built against you. They can't see you now. Not because you're hiding, but because they never had the vision to see what you truly were. Let them search. Let them wonder. But never let them catch up. You don't owe them your time, your explanation, your proof. You don't owe them a war. You already won. And the battlefield, it's no longer drenched in your blood. It's paved with their regrets. Because while they were mocking your fall, you were studying the wind, learning how to turn gravity into flight. Learning how to fall without breaking, and how to rise without warning. You are not a survivor. Survivors carry scars. You are the storm. Storms lead them. And now, you move through this world with a kind of calm that they can't comprehend. Not because you're soft, but because you're finished bleeding. Finished chasing. Finished proving. You've tasted rock bottom. You've walked through hell barefoot. You've lived through the moments they swore would be your end, and you came out sharper, colder, hungrier. They were betting on your collapse. Instead, you became the collapse of everything they believed about you. Let them wear their own delusion like chains. Let them spend the rest of their lives haunted by the truth they refuse to accept. That their hate wasn't your weakness. It was your ignition. That their betrayal wasn't the end of your story. It was the start of your evolution. That their silence wasn't victory. It was the beginning of their irrelevance. See, real power isn't loud. It doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need applause. Real power doesn't announce itself. It moves like shadow, strikes like steel, and vanishes like smoke. It doesn't ask for permission, and it never looks back. That's you now. Unapologetic, unbound, unstoppable. They'll try to rewrite history, of course. They'll try to convince others that they were always supportive, always kind, that they believed in you all along. But the truth has teeth, and the truth doesn't forget. Every ignored message, every passive-aggressive jab, every smile that hid a knife. You remember. Not to hold on to the pain, but to remember the price of letting others define you. You paid in silence, in tears, in sleepless nights. And now, you're done paying. Let them stay behind. Let them fade into echoes. Let them drown in a sea of could-have beens. Because you are not looking back. You're building something they were never invited to understand. Something born not from comfort, not from privilege, not from easy wins, but from grit, rage, and relentless will. You found your edge in darkness, and you sharpened it in silence. And now, you are not just climbing. You're carving your own mountain. One step at a time. One scar at a time. One silent, relentless breath at a time. The world doesn't see you coming. Good. Let them stay blind. Let them stay arrogant. And when they finally notice the shadow stretching across their fragile kingdom, it'll be too late. You'll already be the storm above them. You'll already be the silence after the thunder. The warning they ignored. The reckoning they laughed at. The force they tried to erase and failed. This isn't revenge. It's revelation. That everything they thought they knew about you was wrong. You never needed their validation. You needed their doubt. Because the moment they counted you out was the moment you started counting up. Higher, stronger, colder. You never wanted their throne. You wanted your freedom. And now, you've claimed it. So no, you don't need to fight them anymore. You don't need to prove anything. They lost the second you realized they were never your enemy. They were just noise. And now, you are silence. And silence is absolute. This is your rise. This is your edge. This is the moment they'll pretend they didn't see coming. Let them lie to themselves. Let them keep trying to outrun the ghost of what they did. You won't be chasing. You'll be building, creating, elevating. Because that's the real power. Not revenge. Not war. Transcendence. You've already won. Now, leave them behind. And when the world looks at you in awe, wondering how someone like you could come from so far below, don't explain. Just rise. Let your silence speak. Let your scars shine. Let your presence say what words never could. They bet against the wrong one. And now, they're forgotten. And you're eternal. If you feel that storm inside you, if you've been the outcast, the underdog, the underestimated, then this isn't just a story. It's your war cry. And if you're done crawling through hell and ready to rise through the wreckage, then join the ones who don't just survive. We dominate. Hit that subscribe button. Because this silence, it isn't peace. It's the battlefield. And you've already won. So let them sit in the stillness. Let them hear the echoes of a name they tried to erase. Let them flinch at the sound of your silence, because deep down they know. They know it wasn't luck that brought you here. It wasn't charity. It wasn't chance. It was war. A silent, personal war. One no one saw. One you fought every night in the corners of your mind where no spotlight ever reached. The war of self-doubt, of shame, of clawing your way through every whispered lie they fed you until you no longer believed a single one. And when the dust settled, and the battlefield cleared, who was left? You. Not the person they mocked. Not the version they could manipulate. But something else entirely. Something forged. Something untouchable. They'll never admit it. But they feel it now. That chill in their spine when your name surfaces. That tightness in their chest when your silence fills a room. You're not a threat because you yell. You're a threat because you don't need to. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped shrinking to make others feel tall. You stopped apologizing for the fire in your eyes and the steel in your spine. You became a ghost of the person they tried to control. And now, they're haunted. Haunted by what they could have had beside them, if only they didn't try to stand above you. They thought power was about domination. But power, real power, is presence. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention, it commands it. You walk in and they adjust. They measure their words. They double-check their tone. Because somewhere inside, something primal reminds them they've seen you crawl through hell, and they know you are not afraid to walk through fire again. There's something terrifying about a soul that's already burned and kept walking. They want you to forget. Forget the lies. The nights you doubted your worth. The days you begged for someone to see you. But forgetting would mean forgiving without healing, and you didn't come this far to numb the truth. You came this far because you faced it. Every ugly truth. Every betrayal. Every time they left when you needed them most. You faced it all, and still, you rose. So no, you don't owe them closure. You don't owe them conversation. You don't owe them softness. You owe yourself everything they swore you'd never become. Because now, they watch from behind a glass. Faces pressed to windows they can't break. Looking in on a life they were never strong enough to build for themselves. They called you obsessive. But it wasn't obsession. It was purpose. They called you intense. But it wasn't intensity. It was clarity. They said you were too much. But they meant you were more than they could ever handle. You were never the problem. You were the answer they didn't want to hear. You were the shift in the room. The reminder that comfort breeds weakness and that silence doesn't always mean submission. Sometimes, it's strategy. Sometimes, it's the space between breaths before the storm returns. And now that storm is you. They'll say you changed. Good. That's the point. You killed the version of you that needed their approval. You buried the parts that begged for validation. And in their place, you built someone dangerous. Not because you harm, but because you cannot be harmed the same way anymore. You understand now that survival wasn't the goal. Ascension was. You didn't just want to make it out, you wanted to make it undeniable. You wanted to rise in such a way that even the ones who try to erase you are forced to live in your shadow. Let them squint. Let them pretend they don't see you. Let them stay loud. Because you stay focused. Focused on the path they could never walk. On the climb they never had the discipline to begin. On the silence they'll never understand because they never sat in their own darkness long enough to hear what it was really saying. But you did. And that's what makes you different. You didn't just conquer the enemy. You conquered the reflection. You faced the version of yourself that almost gave in. The one that doubted, begged, and broke. And instead of turning away, you sat with them. You listened. You learned. And then you stood up not as someone new but as someone whole. You carry every version of yourself forward. The broken. The beaten. The betrayed. Because every one of them is your witness. Every one of them watched you rise from the wreckage they were told would be your grave. They told you to let it go. You let go of them instead. You stopped trying to convince people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped wasting your fire on warming those who wanted to watch you freeze. And now you're done explaining. Done seeking closure. Done giving your light to people who only loved your shadow. You are no longer hiding in the ruins. You are building from them. And every brick they threw at you, you kept it. You stacked them. And you made a kingdom. Not out of spite, but out of proof. Proof that every time they counted you out, they were wrong. Proof that every version of yourself they tried to silence still echoes, louder than ever. So let them talk. Let them scroll through your life and feel the gap between where they are and where you went. Let them say it was luck, that it was timing, that you changed. Smile, because they'll never admit the truth, that you were willing to go where they weren't, to sit in pain, to walk alone, to burn your old life without a promise of a new one, and build anyway. You became the thing they warned you about. Unapologetic, unreachable, unforgiving to anything that tries to dim what you fought so hard to ignite. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be undeniable. So don't slow down. Don't soften. Don't fold yourself back into their comfort. You weren't born for that. You were born for this. This silence. This power. This relentless, unshakable rise. And if they fear you now, let them. Because they should. You carry the weight of everything you endured not as a burden, but as evidence of how far you've come, of what it took, and of who you had to become to survive it. Let that be your anthem. Let that be the echo they hear every time your name is spoken. Not just a survivor, not just a fighter, but the storm they thought they escaped, returned. And this time, you are not asking permission. You are not making noise. You are the silence before the collapse. And by the time they realize it, you'll already be gone. Above them. Beyond them. Unreachable. And still rising.